Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Modern Market. This is our daily show from Monday to Friday at 7 a.m. Eastern Time, 12 p.m. BST. Every day of the week, we discuss all things to do with the modern market. That is the crypto market, the NFT market, and the Trump meme coin NFT market. All kinds of stuff going on over the weekend. Pretty crazy stuff. We're here to discuss all of it as it relates to market-related activities. I'm joined by my legendary co-host, Legendary and Bread, this Monday morning. But just a reminder before we get into it, that nothing that we say here is financial advice. This market is incredibly risky and it's getting increasingly crazy, and we don't know anything for sure. So please do proceed with caution and exercise your own judgment. With that out of the way, Legendary, it is Monday. It is the 15th of July. How are you doing?
GM. First of all, got to get used to clicking different buttons as opposed to clicking the buttons that I'm clicking when I'm hosting. I like that we both had the same line of thought. At least to me, it was a deliberate one to have like a green shirt or a green polo shirt today.
I was just going to bring this up if you weren't going to bring it up.
Yeah, it was a deliberate choice. It was like everything is pumping. We have Trump, we have majors, we have other meme coins pumping. So, okay, it has to be the green shirt. There's no other way to go about that.
I actually didn't necessarily think of, I don't know why. I don't typically wear colorful clothes. Maybe it was subconscious, actually. But Brad, got to go to you as the one without greens.
Yeah, I'm here to bring balance.
Not celebrating the green candles.
Yeah, can't trick me.
What's going on, man?
Can't trick me. I'm staying neutral and watching. I'm not deploying the capital yet. Yeah, things are good. Weekend was crazy for a lot of reasons, off chain, on chain. Yeah, excited to talk about it.
Good stuff. Good to have that neutrality. Yeah, it's good to have different perspectives all the time. We're going to try to attack some of the interesting things that were happening over the weekend, but we're going to do so in a way which is as apolitical as possible. We're going to try to talk about all of the events over the weekend from a market perspective. And we're doing this in real time as well. So just appreciate that appreciation and understanding as we go through some of the more important and potentially divisive stuff as well, right? We're conscious of that, but we're going to get into it and more in just a little bit. But as usual, let's start the show off by getting into the headlines coming from the snapshot, which is pinned up top. Let's get into it, starting with some price action. Well, let's get to the price action first on Coin Market Cap, which is here. I'm showing this on the screen for the people who are watching in, as well as those for people who are listening. We've got Bitcoin up almost, but more than 4% at 62.6 K. We've got ETH up almost above 4% as well at 3.3. Solana up 4% to $150. So crypto is up. Just a quick shout out to the meme coin sector. Doge is up 4%, Shiba Inu's up 3%, Pepe up 5%, Dog with Hat up 4%, Bonk up 3%. But much bigger movers, Mog was up 16%, Popcat up 24%. Trump coin is down 11%, but after an enormous pump over the last few days. And Dog to the Moon up 5% too. In terms of the headlines themselves, a lot of price action stuff. We've got crypto surging, as I just mentioned, to those particular prices. Trump ripping 50% from around $6 to more than $9 after the assassination attempt, now settled at $8, sharing on screen the Everyday by Beeple, what I think is going to go down as a pretty iconic image of Trump raising his fist in the aftermath of being shot. Final headline, meme coins rally, Mog up 16%, Popcat 27%, Pepe 9% too, Turbo 18%, and Billy up 50%. So really across the board, everything is rallying. Notable sales included Tyler Hobbs Fidenza, 31.8 ETH. On the art side as well, Dmitry Cherniak Ringer selling for 10.9 ETH. That was a pretty nice one. And a CryptoPunks Purple Cap selling for 27.9 ETH. Legendary, that is the price action. Those are the headlines. Before we get into the bigger stuff today, everything in the aftermath of the Trump assassination attempt. What's catching your attention in the market? Is there anything that you're seeing that you think we should know about?
Yeah, absolutely. If we have a look at the Mintify heat map, moving over to our NFT trading and platform partner, I think there's a couple of things that are that are interesting, that are standing out. We obviously spoke a lot about Mochaverse last week over a couple of shows, and we've seen after the TGE the Mochas going down to almost 1.1 ETH before they had a strong rebound to 1.9 ETH, part of which was caused by Yatsu sweeping. I think it was another 20 Mochas which we
I saw
put
that.
on. The interesting part to me is that obviously the floor has come down a bit from that. It's only down to 1.64 ETH. It's only down 10% over the last 24 hours. So it's most of that pump has not been given back. It's actually managed to sustain, which I found pretty impressive. That on the Mochaverse side of things. And another collection that I wanted to point out is a move that happened more over the last week than over an individual day. And this is why we didn't really touch on it, but we have to now. And it's the Founders Pirates in Pirate Nation. They might only be up a tiny bit over the weekend, actually be down over the last 24 hours. However, if we zoom out a bit and look at the last 7 days, they're up 25% because they slowly, after TGE, been lingering around that 1 to 1.1 ETH floor, and they've been slowly but very consistently climbing up to what is almost a new all-time high for them. All-time high was hit on the weekend with 1.55 ETH. Almost nothing of that has been given back to the market, and they are almost at all-time high and have had a very strong movement up.
That's pretty outrageous, to be honest. I also included that in the snapshot, realizing that they have reached an all-time high in terms of ETH price for their NFTs, and that is after the airdrop. Legendary, is there any other example? This might be completely unprecedented, frankly. Can you think of another example this has been achieved recently?
Not really. Like, even if you look at other gaming NFTs that are doing good right now, I think today the game, the Ancient Seeds, they're also definitely on the trending heat map. They are up 25-30-ish%, but that's still a pre-TGE action. But post TGE, seeing that much strength, especially now in the gaming segment that has been struggling with the influx of tokens, is I think unprecedented. Yeah.
That's crazy. One other follow-up question for me. You know how sometimes these NFTs have like tokens locked inside of them and they're going to vest over a period of time. Do you think this is an example where some details have arisen and it turns out that these NFTs are actually going to yield far more of the pirate, was it the booty tokens or the pirate tokens? I can't remember. Like, is that what's going on ultimately, or is it this pure demand for the NFT?
Probably a bit of both. I mean, let me quickly take a look at CoinMarketCap and see where the pirate token is at right now. If that has been moving up to the same extent.
Yeah, because the thing I'm thinking is it a meme land situation where, again, this doesn't always happen, but if the meme token is trading up, then the NFTs go up as a consequence because there's a certain number of meme tokens kind of locked inside.
So the situation is that Pirate is actually up 20% over the last week, but that's less of a pump than you see with the NFTs. NFTs are, relatively speaking, up 25% more than that. And also, while Pirate Nation, the token is currently at 32 cents, that is a bit of the token's all-time high, which was very, very close to 34 cents. So still a very impressive price performance on that. And I think both of these things are rather rare. I remember also last week, going back to Mochaverse, when we spoke about how the TG went and how we basically moved from 6 cents to 12, 13 cents over the 24 hours, the first day after TGE. That this is a relatively rare thing to see these days, that the token actually goes up after its TGE.
For sure. I want to go to Brad to ask more generally what his perspective in the market, anything that's catching his attention before we get into the main headlines. But I wonder if, since we have Kusho up on stage as well, I know he's like very deeply connected to the Pirate Nation ecosystem. Kusho, welcome to the stage, my friend. We're just wondering out loud here, like, what's the inside scoop? Is this pure demand for the NFT itself? Is it ultimately a play on the token, the fact that the token's doing so well, therefore people want the NFTs and the NFTs are going to yield the token? What's your perspective here, my friend? Welcome to the stage.
I told Joe Biden that Pirate Nation was the next level, was the future. Purely on-chain games are the future
Good stuff.
of all my life.
It's good stuff.
So, GM guys. So I'm just messing around. The NFTs do yield token, and they provide a very, very high multiplier
Okay.
on the current airdrop campaign.
Got it.
So I believe that might be one direction in which people are going when it comes to getting the NFTs. I mean, since you can pretty much get a free NFT to play the game, it's not necessary to get the Founder's Pirate, but it does help you to get more yield, not just for the Pirate token airdrop, but for also the proof of play token airdrop, which is something that's not really spoken much about.
Interesting.
But proof of play is the infrastructure play. Like when you're talking about Pirate Nation is one game. Proof of play is an infrastructure that allows you to build multiple other types of fully on-chain games. And the vision for Pirate Nation is to get other games to build on proof of play. So Pirate Nation Founder Pirates might be a play for those future games and getting positioned for all those airdrops as well.
It's the Axie Ronin thing, right?
Yeah, that type of thing.
Very interesting. Okay, we did definitely did not know that. So that's awesome context, Kusho. Appreciate that, and a very scary version, a very scary impression there from you. That was pretty disorientating for a second. I'm not gonna lie.
I had to double check if I brought up real Kusho, if there's some troll impersonating our Kusho. So good job on that.
Yeah, very good. We like that. Okay, so that's interesting perspective on the Pirate Nation stuff. Shout out to that team. They're like managing that whole ecosystem very, very well. And I think a lot of other gaming projects who are managing ecosystems as well, who have definitely pressed time out for the last few weeks because they want to try to figure out the right time in the market. If there's any project at the moment that I think is worth studying, is clearly Pirate Nation, I think. So well done to them. Brad, on a separate point, just before we get into the headlines properly, anything catching your attention in the market on the NFT side, on the crypto side? How are you feeling about things?
Okay, if you're not boxing me into NFTs, which my only comment was going to be, and I don't think this is controversial, people's art is not good. I see that and I go, why? I know it's people, so I guess that's good. It's iconic and it's like signature, but I just go, that's not a good piece. But that's separate. It's gonna probably sell for a lot of money at some point because the guy does this thing. Outside of that, honestly, I'm paying heavy attention to the DeFi space. I think you've seen some prominent investors, Arthur from Defiant, and Defiant have talked for several weeks now about a DeFi resurgence. So I've started to do a little bit of analysis on some of these DeFi coins, namely these DEXs, lending markets, CDPs, stuff like that, to see if there is life being shown in that. And if there was going to be life and there is a little bit of a re-rating, then there's going to be some energy poured into that. And saw that, yeah, there's some mispricings. If you do think there's a DeFi resurgence coming, especially on the DEX side, the Solana DEX side. And I'm kind of going down the different categories now. So I'm going to start looking at lending markets. I'm going to start looking at actually Telegram bots are fucking cooking right now. So I think in the face of all this nihilism that's going around and everyone being disenfranchised with everything right now about it, like fundamentals not mattering, I think we might see the pendulum swing back to coins with fundamentals. And if you think the next marginal buyer is TradFi and maybe not retail, well, they're probably gonna be more likely or they more easily deploy into these types of tokens. Yeah, that's where I've been putting my attention.
Very interesting. One comment on that, and then I'd actually like to use that as like our discussion point for the day. My comment, again, one of the things I'm getting better at is just noticing my own attention and noticing my own behavior. And I've realized I've kind of got to this sticking point at the moment where all of this ETH was working at some point in time. I was quite bullish on Blast, and that worked out well, despite it not being as good as people expected. It worked out well. Then I had all this ETH restaking. That also worked out well, but it's kind of the marginal benefit is decreasing. So it's not as good as it once was. And so I'm kind of at the sticking point now. It's like, what's the next play? Where are we looking? Where are we going to be allocating stuff? And yeah, this DeFi conversation has come up. I'm just going to share one of the tweets that you had on it, Brad, and maybe give you a chance to share, kind of extend your thinking here. You said finding DEX gems for Arthur's DeFi re-rate. If our marginal buyers are TradFi, not retail, then they'll look for fees and revenue, not memes. Highlights: Solana DEX, you've got Ray and you've got Orca, are underpriced against its peers, and the only tokenless protocol in the top 10 is Thruster on Blast. I've definitely got some thoughts on that, but want to give you a chance to speak to that a little bit more. Maybe go through your thinking, then want to hear Legendary's thoughts on whether this is definitely the case.
Yeah, I mean the TLDR in the video, like there's two parts. The graph before that, so like the first 5 seconds, 10 seconds actually has a graph that's more telling. The TLDR is, yeah, okay, if you think things are going to come back to DeFi, then you think all of these sectors are going to be re-rated. Then I was trying to locate, okay, if we think it's going to be re-rated, which ones are going to re-rate the hardest? So I did a combination of seeing the current token FDVs relative to the fees that they're generating, and fee generation across most protocols these days is the best way to determine how much it's actually worth, right? The network is worth what people are willing to pay. Solana is getting to the point where it almost flipped Ethereum again this weekend. On the 12th, it was $30,000 from flipping Ethereum and fees. So it's just that if you think the sector is going to re-rate, you want to see, okay, what's being used. And then I did a comparison of current token FTVs of these DEXs relative to the fees that they're generating. And when you do that, you see that there are two tokens that are vastly outperforming their peers relative to their TVL locked and their FDV of their actual native asset. And both of them are Solana DEXs. It's Orca and it's Radium. Radium's been a top fee generator for several days this last month. So yeah, just isolating that. It's like, if you believe that there's going to be a re-rate, then, and you think it's going to come to DEXs broadly, then those two things stand to re-rate the most heavily. And yeah, when you start actually comparing like the amount of fees that they're generating relative to like the actual value of their token, you're like, wow, yeah. I mean, it's not a meme coin, but it's like, so you can't just like throw everything away. You're like, okay, this thing is trading at, I think Radium right now's FDV is just over $1 billion, and it's generating over 7 days, it was generating just under $18 million. So like if these traditional metrics are something that you think people coming into the space, the next marginal buyer, if it is traditional finance, right? If they come in because of the ETF, they get more exposure. They don't want to buy, just the ETF, or maybe they're getting a little more leniency or they can buy more stuff. They're probably going to be looking to things that actually have cash flow as opposed to like Pepe.
But it's fully diluted bread, and it's a fantastic meme.
No arguments there.
Argument one. Look, I've actually got some specific commentary on this, but want to give Legendary a chance to answer the question. Do we agree with that underlying assumption here? If TradFi comes in, they'll look for fees and revenue, not memes. And then B, any commentary on the couple of tokens that Bread picked out, or anything else that you'd have your eye on if that was the case? And then I'm going to come in on it.
Yeah, absolutely. A couple of thoughts on that. I think it's a multi-step process. I think if TradFi comes in, yes, they understand a DEX more than a meme coin. Obviously, we've seen institutional money trying to understand meme coins, and I don't think that it's basically ruled out that they will ever get engaged with meme coins. But I definitely agree with Brad that the thinking is a DEX is easier to understand. Liquidity provision is easier to understand, especially if you also look at institutional money that has come into the space to try to do arbitrage strategies, whether that's buying BTC spots and also trading futures at the same time. So the LP stuff is something that they would rather have a grasp at. Additionally, also, if you move away from the native tokens and also think about basically if you want meme coin exposure but don't want to have a full risk on meme coin position, you could provide liquidity for that. And I think as a side comment, not only for institutional money, it's something we've seen with some people in this space when you had BOM or other tokens ripping to insane values, how much you were printing over the first 24 to 48 hours on fees. So I think it's a learning curve. You can understand what a DEX does. You can buy the native token, and then you can also get involved in using its actual products more and more actively. And if you do that as part of that progression, you will get in touch with meme coins and might or might not be interested in trading them in a more active way. As to your second question, I think there was a very interesting point that Brett had pointed out in one of his posts, or actually two of them. One was that Thruster, the main DEX on Blast, is the one that is without the token. It's the only one in the top 10 DEXs. And also in terms of Solana specifics, and that might speak more to the cultural structure of the Solana blockchain, that Brett was making the point that non-native penetration into the Solana ecosystem is non-existent. The first app in the DEX category of Solana that isn't Solana only comes in at the 11th place with only 7.6 mil TVL. So that's very, very interesting to see that this is a completely isolated, basically section of successful teams and products that are being built on Solana, and it's not a cross penetration from, I don't know, say Uniswap related products coming in at a stronger.
Uniswap, remember Lido tried to get into. Lido couldn't do shit, and Jito is now the leader. It's just no one from any other ecosystem has been able to penetrate. Almost every app I look at on there, it's just on one chain, and it's on Solana.
And ETH native ecosystems have multiple times tried to penetrate the Solana ecosystem, but they never managed to do that in a successful way.
That's a very, very interesting point on the types of teams that end up being successful on particular chains. It's almost like there's some type of invisible moat where, whether that's a cultural moat, probably a cultural moat that
I would say cultural. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like the users will simply tend towards one particular type of company instead of one that is already established on ETH, almost like they just want no part of it. So that is a very interesting point. I don't know if this is a counterpoint for me, but the thing that I have noticed, and I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on this, is that I was also very enamored with the idea that these protocols on Blast at one particular time were getting loads of TVL, generating loads of fees. But then I just noticed like the FDVs just weren't catching a bid. Like they just were absolutely not catching a bid in any circumstance. And whilst I take the point that people are looking for fees, I'm starting to wonder, like, is this the equivalent of, you know, a successful business being successful in one particular neighborhood, but if you don't like the neighborhood, people will not come in and bid. It doesn't matter how successful the business is. The neighborhood has been...
People didn't like Solana for a long time.
Yeah. The neighborhood is perceived in a particular way. Therefore, it won't attract a particular type of clientele in terms of an investor. And look, this is nothing against this particular protocol. This is just one of the realities of, I guess, operating on Blast for the moment. Juice, for example, which has attracted huge amounts of TVL. Like for all intents and purposes, I don't know the fees generated, Brett, and I don't know if you've looked into that, but Juice has been around for a while. It's got a huge TVL. But its current FDV is at 11 million, which is insane, given that it's, you know, given that on a fundamental basis, and I don't know about the fees question, which is one of the things you're saying is very important, but on a TVL basis, it's a huge protocol, absolutely huge protocol. It almost doesn't make sense that it would be this underpriced. And I don't know, I would lean towards the conclusion, which is, well, it's on Blast and the things on Blast can't catch a bid at the moment because of some of the other factors where people's perception of Blast is that it's this degenerate place where people go and it's very speculative and all of those things. Now, that doesn't mean that there can't be cool stuff there. It doesn't mean that there can't be valuable things there, but it feels like that's what the market is concluding at the moment. So to my point, when you mentioned Thruster, I'd be super interested to see what that comes out at, because I've had a similar line of thinking. I've been using Thruster all the time. I've been on Blast, been trying to put a lot of volume through there. It would be very, very, I'm watching that very, very closely as an indicator for how the rest of the Blast ecosystem can play out. Because if that can't hold, given all of its volume that it's done, and people can't catch a bid on that, I would be very worried for that ecosystem. So I've kind of taken that into the Blast conversation, but it's basically a conversation on DEXs and big protocols, regardless of where they are. And I don't know if that's only exclusive to Blast. Like, I wonder whether, given that L2s are just proliferating at such a rate at the moment, will the premier L2 on every one of them be worth multi-billions of dollars? I don't think so anymore. Brad, maybe it's worth you coming in first on that.
Yeah, I say just for what it's worth, I'm looking at Juice's numbers. Juice is categorized as a leveraged farming protocol, and amongst those, they are the top by TVL still by almost 100 million. It's 286. The next one's at 209, and then 121. So you have to contextualize it based on like what it should be compared to. And I don't know if it like Gearbox, Extra Finance, Homura, Delta Prime. These are all things that are comparative to it, and I haven't heard of any of those things. Gearbox I have, but the rest of them I haven't. So for token price for this, maybe that's what's going on. And for what it's worth, both Blast and Thruster, I think, may fall into that category of things that are used but mispriced for a while. But I have recently been listening to, and if we do think there's a swing back to fundamentals, I've been listening to a few podcasts. OX Research is one that's a favorite of mine. They're very technically minded, and they do research reports for Blockworks. And on that, people coming in and even looking at Blast going, if you just look at the raw numbers, Blast is mispriced right now. It's mispriced. And that may be the case for things like Thruster, things that are native to Blast, where yes, like there's an emotional time in the market right now. Everyone is despondent because there's tokens everywhere. It's the 95th launch in the last 30 days, and there's just like not enough liquidity to go around. But at some point, you have to separate all of these things whenever money is coming into the ecosystem. You say, why should I buy X over Y? And when people look for justifications, it's the same way that people may do it for DeFi. They're going to say, what gives me confidence to buy? Oh, this thing is used, right? That's the reason why TradFi may potentially, that's like the narrative belief of DeFi in general is I don't have confidence like anecdotally to like go and test all these things. I'm trying to look at metrics to determine, to give me confidence on what to buy. I'm going to buy things that are being used. It's generating cash flow. It's doing whatever. It's clearly being whatever. So you would have to believe that at some point the market would have an influx of capital, and that capital would look to be allocated, and it would look for reasons to be confident to buy certain things. And when it comes to that, on-chain metrics is probably what a lot of people are going to lean to. So yeah, it's just, you have to believe it's being mispriced right now.
Okay. A lot of good points there. Maybe a final question for Legendary, and maybe Brad, you want to come in on this as well. Isn't this the hope that's kind of existed over and over again, though, for the DeFi tokens? Like, people have always thought, look, this stuff is really, really useful, and still people will not bid them. So is this like is it a fairy tale?
Pull up the Aave chart.
Yeah, I'll pull up the Aave one at the same time. Brad, you want to come in on that? Like, if you had to prescribe some type of probability to this stuff.
So you're right. Like it's had a long bear. Like it's not been doing good. But Maker and Aave are the two that are standing out right now. They're kind of leading the market. Look at the all-time chart for that, and you can see, yes, it was going crazy. It has had a long period since. It's been down only from 21 all the way through mid 23, beginning of 23. But it's been going sideways since that time, and it's now starting to peel back up. And the thought is that one, like, yes, that did happen. Two, now, okay, we have the pendulum has swung so heavily into meme coins, things without fundamentals at all, that people are starting to become numb to it and they don't like it. They're trying to come back to center or to the things with fundamentals. Two, we now, especially with the weekend news with Trump, have a future that is probably going to be crypto friendly, where we can get regulatory clarity on some of these things. Because the biggest thing that's been against all this is that all the tokens associated to these protocols that are generating actual fees is that there's no way to tie fees to token, right? No one can make money on it because you can't actually turn on the fee switch. That's always been the hope. It's always been the dream. Uniswap, right, generates a fuck ton of fees. Fees never went back to the token, so it's a useless governance token. Well, what was it, 3 months ago, Uniswap actually had the proposal to where it can actually start having fees come back to the token holders. I forget the actual latest status of that because I went back and forth like 2 or 3 times. But if you believe that now Trump and a regulatorily lenient regime is coming in place, that we can actually get some of these things that are already starting to show signs of life actually pushed through to where tokens can actually tie directly to the fees generated by these protocols. And you think that, the pendulum swung too far into the nihilistic, like these things don't matter, nothing matters, it's all memes, buy the picture stuff. I don't know, there's a little bit of a recipe there. So you'd have to believe all those things would kind of come together, but you can see some confluence of events.
Interesting stuff. Unless Legendary, do you have anything else on this? Because otherwise we're going to slide into the Trump conversation.
No, very much agree with Brad, and it's not only native to Aave. It's a very similar pattern that we see. If we take a look at the Uniswap chart, where you basically have been trending sideways between $4 and $5 or dead for more than a year, and suddenly came back to life at the start of this year when we had exactly the news around the fee switch that Brad was speaking about.
Interesting stuff. I think that's completely fair, right? I guess the fairy tale is always that they can turn the fee switch on, and until that happens, or until people have confidence in that, they won't necessarily be able to move on it. But maybe some potential front running of that, if that's what people believe will happen, as you said, because of the political movements in the last few months. A few shout outs too in the comments before we get to the headlines. We're going to slide into the Trump conversation in just a little bit. Matt on Twitter said, TradFi can barely comprehend ETH. We're light years away from wealth managers shilling Pepe to clients. Revenue matters. So we're talking about how the fee switch is important. People like to see that protocols are making revenue. That's a good point. On YouTube, Overarch said, Wasabi token not out yet either. Could do well. Yeah, Wasabi, that's a good shout. Wasabi has been doing very nicely on Blast 2 in the similar vein to, Juice attracting a lot of TVL. I think Wasabi have been building out very nicely as well. A couple other things in the comments. I think that's enough for now. Right, we want to get into the Trump conversation. There were a few things. Obviously, the assassination attempt over the weekend took everyone by. Well, I think it was quite shocking. On both sides, a lot of shock about what happened, and the markets have responded fairly positively, to be honest. As I mentioned at the top of the show, but if you missed it, we're going to try to deal with this from a market perspective. We're not going to get bogged down in the politics of either side of it. So we're going to talk about it from that perspective and that perspective only. Looking at, we saw the meme coins rally. Trump went from about just over $6 to just over $9, so almost 50%. It's now pulled back to around 8. Crypto is obviously up across the board as well. Legendary's favorite market, which is the poly market, has Trump moving up to a 71% chance of winning versus Biden at 18%. Maybe just an opportunity first to speak about the general market first, Legendary, before I want to kind of talk about some potential outcomes based on the probability of each party winning. But just some general thoughts from you first.
Yeah, I think a poly market, also tackling this from a non-political view, is a pretty strong shift that we've seen after that. I think there was a lot of commentary when it came to the attempted assassination on Reagan, and then the election in 84, et cetera, and the potential impact on that. So the market, as you said, has reacted quite positively to that. We also had, I think it was Ovi coming out with a post this morning that people are still underestimating the basically potential impact of Trump being re-elected and how EV positive that is. And that the thinking might be that, especially if you look at those odds, I mean, at the end of the day, that's a $260 million bet that is significant money that's flowing into it, might make you think that a lot of that is priced in. And Ovi is making the point that even if there's a 25% chance of Trump actually following through with what he's speaking about in this pre-election phase, that it's still a massively EV positive scenario that is being painted for crypto.
Interesting. I'm just going to share that tweet here for a bit of context. I think this is the one that you're referencing. Ovi earlier today said Trump won't follow on his crypto promises, in inverted commas. 1, whether he does or doesn't isn't relevant for the next 6 months of price action. Number 2, even if there's a 25% chance of him doing so, the EV is insanely positive. So that's that perspective. Brad, I want to throw to you straight away before we get into some other details here. Like, what are your thoughts on the weekend's kind of events and the consequences of it for the market?
Yeah, and honestly, it just kind of reiterates what I was just talking about with DeFi tokens, regulatory clarity. I mean, bullishness for the market in general. It's always hard to predict these things. I think the thing that we can do now is that this, like, we've already, I think everyone's in their heads has already settled that, okay, Trump's won. Because of this weekend, Trump's won. And I think now the market will react in that way, right? So like, even though like we don't know, something may happen, he may not be elected, the market is now going to start trying to price in him winning because of this last weekend being such a pivotal moment in fucking history, frankly. So now, if everyone's going to start pricing it that way, or what a Trump regime would be, and it is the mental space of, okay, it is going to be crypto friendly because he's already come out and said that very strongly. Like, maybe he doesn't have to push it as hard because he's like in this position, but he's likely to just continue to run it up because that's the type of person that he is. Run it up, like get people hooting and hollering for him. Like, it's overall a bullish trend for us, and yeah, maybe we can start trying to bid on things with the anticipation that the market, whether or not he wins in that time of election, we know that the market is going to start pricing it that way between now and a month before.
Okay, this is the question I have for you. I don't disagree with any of that. I think that's all very accurate, kind of pricing in the prediction that Trump is coming to presidency. My question is more about the probability, even if he doesn't, like the counterfactual of if it's not him. I was trying to work this through in my head. I wanted to write a post about it, but didn't have time this morning. I might write something later. So like, I think the probability of Trump coming in is higher than Biden. Therefore, stuff is moving positively. But then I started to wonder, even in the inverse, even in the counterfactual where he doesn't win, because people are saying, well, even if there's a 25% chance it's him, that's a bet kind of worth making. So, well, okay, if it's not him and it's Biden instead, is that not in some way bullish crypto? And this might just me be smoking the hopium. Is that not bullish crypto in the sense that, well, two things. One, they don't seem to be, the Democrats don't seem very well put together at the moment. And it's almost bearish the dollar for a Biden to be in at the moment, which I think people would start to lose trust in the fabric of what's going on there at the moment. And therefore, would that make people bid the coins? Potentially, that's one of my lines of thinking. And then the separate thing, which is maybe less political to some degree, is rates are coming down anyway. So like, whether it is Trump or whether it is Biden, crypto is just continuously correlated to rates, and maybe at some point in time it will be less correlated. But even if it was Biden, and rates are going to come down anyway, isn't it still fine and still bullish? I don't know. Is this?
I'm no macro guy, but this is what I just heard out of your mouth. Was I said Trump elected, bullish, and then you said Trump not elected, bullish, price go up. So I'm going to turn off my actual critical thinking brain and try to like decipher that and just say, thank you, B-Check, for pumping my bags. Everything is up and to the right.
What's the pushback though, Rick? Give me some pushback. Is that wrong?
So again, I'm not a short-term trader, and like I'm trying to get into it with some of these, like doing analytics of coins, and like, okay, I can do some trends within the crypto sphere. Get me outside of that bubble and I'm in trouble. So like, I think on a long enough time horizon, all this stuff is up and to the right. And that's what gives me the confidence to play to the degree that I am. If you start talking rates with me, if you start talking like some of that, you're getting outside of my wheelhouse. It's hard for me to say.
Fair enough. Legendary, are you going to bite? Give me some pushback. We were talking about this a little bit before the show as I was talking you through some of my thinking. What's your thought here? In essence, my point is, even in the counterfactual, it's still relatively bullish crypto specifically. It's not what's your thoughts there?
Yeah, I think the pushback would be to say it's a different narrative. I think with Trump, the narrative is exactly what Brad has been saying. We have a very good chance of being more crypto friendly when it comes to regulation. USA is setting a precedence for other countries as well, with the exception obviously being the EU, which already has the MiCA framework that starts to come in action over this summer. And if you wanted to make a Biden bullish case, I think that happens on a different time horizon. You would then have to expect a dollar that gets weaker versus the euro. You would have to expect another couple of years of regulatory, either a harsher approach or just lack of clarity. And that together would probably in the initial phase have a similar effect that we've seen with Uniswap. We had, oh, fee switch is coming, great, price is pumping. Then nope, fee switch is not coming, price is not pumping any longer. So I would say all those positive effects that you are making in a pro-Biden case would play out over the midterm and over the long term, but they are not necessarily Biden specific. They are like independent. Like we will have rate cuts, and that is not that much impacted by the election right now. So I wouldn't say it's a specifically pro-Biden case. It's just what other bullish factors exist, even if Biden wins, to offset that, that happiness that we already have about a potential easier route when it comes to regulations around the crypto space.
Okay. I think that is fair. I was looking for some pushback because, as Brett said, it sounded a little bit too positive to just say we're going to go up. Don't worry about it. But remember, guys, this is all just like, we're just having a conversation here. We don't know anything for sure. Like, we're just literally explaining our thinking. This is something I had a thought of this morning, and I thought it'd be an interesting conversation to have out loud with people while you listen in. So I hope that's helpful. Tiro, your hand is raised. Want a quick take on you from this before we slide into one of the other topics. Welcome to the stage, my friend. What are you thinking here?
Yeah, good morning, guys. Like the whole Dem versus Republicans, like crypto, and like which one is going to pump our bags more, kind of like, I think they're both. If you look at the relative age of the Senate and the Congress or the House of Representatives, they don't understand crypto. They can hardly work their phones or write an email. So like it's going to be very difficult to get legislature passed if we can't educate these people and get crypto-minded people that are younger and our age that understand this. So we'll see what happens. I think eventually Jill Biden will step down. She's the one that's kind of anchoring what's going on here. And as we can see, as I watched the debate 4 years ago, Joe Biden versus today, a side by side, you can see he's lost this many steps, unfortunately. So and looking at the poly market, and the play is for Kamala. We've seen other presidential candidates step down. Lyndon B. Johnson did because of how he did it in Vietnam. So I don't want to get into a whole history story here, but I would say
yeah, it's an interesting point. I wonder whether on Polymarket, I'm just going to have a look at the moment, Tiro. I wonder if there's because I guess this current Polymarket bet is on who will be the winner. Maybe the question I'm about to ask would just get priced in here immediately, but is there a current bet? Maybe Legendary, this, if there's a current bet for like whether he'll get swapped out or not. Are you aware of that?
There is a bet on will Biden finish his term. That's a $1 million bet that currently sees him at a 80% chance that he will finish his term, and that actually has been going up, especially over the weekend. We've been at 66 cents on July 11th. So over the weekend, we've been climbing. And that kind of goes in line with, again, with some of the commentary that I've seen from political analysts, not saying they necessarily share that line of thinking, but the argument was being made that in tough times like this, when you have assassination attempts where obviously you have political violence, it would be a massive strong of weakness to last minute swap out the candidate. Which basically would be an admission that he can't handle a situation like that and would make the party or would make the candidate look even weaker. Again, this is not my opinion. This is some political analysts' commentary that I've been reading over and over on the weekend.
Interesting stuff. Thanks for that additional context, Legendary. Thanks for bringing that up, Tiro. Look, this is going to be, if the weekend is anything to go by, like, who knows? Who knows what is going to happen as we go into November and the elections? But we'll be covering it the whole time. We'll be covering it in real time and hopefully trying to provide some perspective, market thoughts. Not going to get bogged down into the specific politics of it, but hopefully that was an interesting discussion as to how we've been thinking about the market aspect of it over the last few days. And we'll continue to do that as we move it over the summer and into the election. So hopefully that was helpful. Before we hit the final or last couple headlines, we'll big talking points. Let's get the Web3 roundup from the snapshot, which is pinned up top, to get you up to speed with everything else that's happened in the past, over the past weekend. So number one, Donald Trump will still attend the Bitcoin conference, according to Pluid reporting on this, following yesterday's assassination attempt. Number two, Forma. This was pretty cool. Forma announces the first ever Solana economic zone in Buenos Aires. I encourage you to click through and watch this really interesting 5-minute video on what Argentina is trying to do to stimulate the economy, as well as the crypto community, and specifically the Solana, this Solana cohort there, who are trying to help connect the economy to crypto. Very interesting stuff. Next, as we mentioned already, Pirate Nation NFTs hit an all-time high of 1.5 ETH, even after the airdrop. Worth studying their tokenomics and their design to continue to bring value to their holders. MOG is the biggest 24-hour gain amongst the top 100 coins, up 14% to $700 million market cap. And in more news, Bold Leonidas sells a Trump one of one called Mist for 4.07 ETH. I'm showing that on the screen for those of you who are watching in on YouTube and who are watching in on Twitter. Pretty cool piece. To be honest, kind of got Trump not cartwheeling backwards, but swaying backwards in the style of Neo in the Matrix, dodging the bullet. Next, EAR token runs to $20 million before pullback to 5 million. Again, I think what was kind of either entertaining or depressing is that as soon as the assassination attempt happened, I suspect lots of people ran to Pump.fun or TradingView to see what tokens were trading as a consequence, and EAR was one of them. And finally, on the more gaming side of things, Saudi Arabia will host the Olympic esports games. The Olympics said that the committee today announced that it's partnered with the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia to host the inaugural Olympic esports games in 2025. So that's interesting to see on the gaming side. Legendary, that is it from the Web3 roundup. We've just got a little bit more time left today, and we've spoken about Trump and its activity on the market. We've kind of spoken about the market more generally too. Meme coins have rallied quite aggressively, and maybe I wanted to touch on for the final 8 minutes on this kind of meme coin financial nihilism that Brad was speaking to a little bit earlier. Where do you think memes kind of sit in this cycle? Very importantly, there were some prominent investors who, I don't know, maybe a few weeks ago came out and started to say that memes are fully diluted. They're like a great investable class. Maybe we're going to see a Dogecoin ETF. We're going to see meme coin ETFs. Then the market got wrecked. Meme coins obviously took a big hit, as the rest of the market has trended down at the same time. What's your thought on this particular basket of assets at the moment? Yeah, what's your thinking?
It's a very interesting basket. Like, if you think about the sentiment side of things, when we have a bit of a rally, it's easiest for meme coins to rally because, right, you don't need a fee switch for Uniswap for a meme coin to rally. You just have the meme in itself. And obviously, also when you have more controversial things happening on the timeline in terms of projects not delivering, whether that was the case with Well, which we talked about on the show quite extensively.
Yes.
It's easy to talk about a meme coin and say, hey, there are no promises. It is already at 100% market cap. There's no more tokens, no more investor unlocks, etc. to come. I mean, obviously there's insider trading in the very early stages, but it's a more transparent, a more honest view, but it's like highly dependent on sentiment, because I feel like all those positive things that we're making for meme coin, they go away in the instance that in the instant when the majors are dumping. It's obviously the most volatile asset, so it's the first one to correct. And I feel like if you extrapolate that a bit, if you think about an institutional investor, basically the first thing that they sell when there's uncertainty is their crypto exposure, if they have any, because to them that's the most volatile asset. And I feel like for us as crypto natives, meme coins is to us what crypto is to a institutional investor. It's the most volatile asset in our portfolio. So obviously it's the first one to get either rid of or to buy back into once we think that things are changing. So it's actually becoming a pretty instantaneous sentiment indicator. It's like not a lagging indicator. It's very, very instantaneous to get a read on the market to see how we feel about meme coins. Like we talked about last week, I think it was a show where you weren't on no, you were on actually on that one, where we talked about the fear and greed indicator on CoinMarketCap. and how actually this thing is working, and looking at longer time averages and putting together 4 or 5 different data points, that is more of a lagging indicator. And you kind of see it if you look at the fear and greed indicator right now. We've been in the 30s, now we're back to 48 to neutral, and I will bet that this thing moves up over the next couple of days and is actually lagging as opposed to meme coins. So even from that standpoint, if you're not interested in trading them yourself, it is, I think, very important to monitor them to get a good read on the live sentiment of the market, to process that in a very, very quick and efficient way.
I like that take. I like that take a lot. Even if you're not in it, to just keep an eye, because you have what might be considered like meme majors now routinely doing like up 15% in a day, down 20% in a day. And that's pretty interesting. Like, given that they've kind of taken this position as like the majors within the meme basket, it's quite interesting to be able to have that amount of volatility in something which people are starting to consider more safe, whether or not they are as safe as you'd like them to be. Brad, definitely want to come to you on this. You mentioned the kind of financial nihilism aspect, where people are starting to think that, you know, this is the best way forward, no expectations, no returns. That's the only things that we're able to pump up to higher valuations. You were pushing against that a little bit earlier. What are your thoughts, sir?
Yeah, I mean, if we're just talking like for memes specifically, I dumped my boat in this weekend. I know that because I think memes have a place in this, and you obviously seen like the market's going to continue to react to it. And you're right, like people are drawn to it because of the volatility. So whether that's, and yeah, like we have majors now that are safe, quote unquote, and the fact that we have actual investment firms actually doing these big think pieces on this stuff, like memes are going to be around. I think it's just going to continue to be a thing. It's just where we are in the cycle that determines what the next thing to pump is going to be, right? Like it's always who's the next buyer, right? Whenever, and I'm starting to think this is actually what has led to the trickle down waterfall that everyone's pointing to the last few cycles, right? Oh, it's BTC, it's ETH, and then it goes to alts, and then it goes to whatever. And like we always view the buyers as like this homogenous group, but the question is always like, who's the next marginal buyer? And when you run out of next marginal buyers, prices go down, right? So if it's always the crypto native people, they're exposed to the main assets, and then you have the next marginal buyer, probably someone that is somewhat intelligent, right, or at least sophisticated in the financial world. They are likely to plug their stuff into a spreadsheet to determine what they want to buy. So that's why you maybe saw the majors start to pump initially, because that would happen. And then the next marginal buyer, once those people are allocated largely, the next marginal buyer is retail, right? It's the fucking cab drivers, it's the whatevers. So then all the silly shit starts pumping because that is the thing that resonates with them. That's the thing that they can relate to, that they can buy. So we call it going down the risk curve, but it's literally just like, this is the thing that they can relate to and they can understand, and they don't give a shit. They're not sophisticated. So they're buying everything, and then everything goes crazy. And then the next marginal buyer is gone, because that is the last buyer. And then everything goes down, right? So that determines the end of a cycle. So, I mean, I think this is loosely tracking to basically everything else. The problem is now, we've seen that twice. So even the sophisticated, quote unquote, people, the people inside the ecosystem, and some of the sophisticated buyers say, this is how this always plays out. We think it's going to play out that way again. So we're front running ourselves and going to the end of the risk curve and starting that off. So yeah, I'll continue to play in it. I dumped my boat in this weekend because for obvious reasons. And then, yeah, you have to keep an eye on it for sure.
Fair enough. I think that's a great type of question for each person to ask themselves as they're thinking about either whole asset class or individual tokens that they're holding. Who's the marginal buyer? Good thing to keep in your mind as you're processing all of the potential decisions. So let's leave it at that. Great set of analysis and questions and thinking there. And that's the end of the show. So appreciate you guys. Thanks so much for joining us. As always, run this every day, Monday to Friday, 7 a.m. Eastern time, 12 p.m. BST. We're live on X, live on YouTube. We've got 140 live in the space today, but we've been getting loads and loads of views on YouTube as well now. If you're not already, please do subscribe on YouTube. If you can like the videos, that would help us out on the algorithm. We appreciate you very much for doing that. As always, thank you to my legendary co-hosts, Legendary and Bread. Thank you to our contributors, Tiro and Kusho. up on stage. We'll be back again tomorrow at the same time, same place, to go through everything with you. Have a great day. See you then. Bye-bye.